Right then, Erik Ten Hag is still the manager of Man United, and I, probably like a lot of you, am surprised. I'm surprised because so far INEOS have shown us that they are quite ruthless, and so I did think that this would be the moment that they pull the trigger, especially when you consider that in the summer they so publicly were looking for a replacement. I'm surprised because the last time Man United actually won a football match was against Barnsley in the Carabao Cup. We're talking almost a month ago. Now, for me personally, I backed Ten Hag in moments where maybe I shouldn't have, in moments where he maybe didn't give me anything to back him for, but nonetheless, I backed him. But even now, at this point, I think the tide has turned, and I don't see a way that Erik Ten Hag can turn this around. However, INEOS have kept him in the role, and I think there are some valid reasons as to why they've decided to do so. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the top 5 reasons why INEOS have kept Erik Ten Hag in the job. No outstanding candidate. The same problem that INEOS had in the summer, they still have now, which I think is probably at the top of the list as to why they haven't gotten rid of Erik Ten Hag so far. Now, it is very, well, reports suggest that Sir Jim Ratcliffe does like Thomas Tuchel and that Thomas Tuchel would be the man that he would like to bring in. However, if reports are to be true, Tuchel will soon be the new England manager, which I think is pretty good for the English national side, so good luck to him. But nonetheless, it means that Tuchel is no longer an option. For me, he probably would be my number one option as well. Despite some of the negatives and despite the sort of distraction factor that he brings to the club, I think that I would still choose him as my number one. He is the only, I think, world-class coach that we could bring in, but he's gone. So Thomas Tuchel is no longer even, well, supposedly so, no longer an option for us. And then you've got a whole bunch of names below that, which for me kind of all fall into one category. We're talking Ruben Amorim, we're talking Kieran McKenna, Michael Carrick, who else was there? Thomas Frank, Graham Potter. Southgate is by himself. See you later. That is never happening, and thank God that is never happening. But you've got all these other managers, which for me are managers who you'd be taking a huge risk on. It's a massive punt because we're talking about managers who, okay, have shown promise. They've shown that they're good coaches. Their teams can play good football. A lot of their clubs have made some good progress. You're talking the likes of Kieran McKenna. We're talking 2 back-to-back promotions from League One into the Championship into the Premier League. That is really impressive. And obviously his experience at Man United as well. Michael Carrick doing some good things in the Championship as well. Ruben Amorim with Sporting. Thomas Frank with Brentford, who, by the way, I think Thomas Frank is quite an underrated manager, but still, they all fall under the same category for me, which is that they are risky appointments. You have no idea what you're going to get because ultimately you can be a fantastic coach. You can know the game inside out. You can have brilliant tactical ideas which work. You can have the coaching side to it. That's great. But Man United it's a level above anything else in English football. The managerial role at Man United is by far the most scrutinised role in English football. Fact. There is no debating that. So it's not just about a coach coming in and coaching the team. It's about a manager coming in and managing what comes with the responsibilities that come with the club. We have seen, and I think that Ten Hag, you see it in Ten Hag a little bit, which is that he can't handle the media that well. He can't handle the press that well. There is a whole nother side apart from football which comes with managing Manchester United. It is not an easy job. And I think that with those names that I just mentioned, you could try. It'd be a massive risk. I mean, we've seen Ashworth do it with the likes of Graham Potter at Brighton, with De Zerbi at Brighton, but it's just not the same at Man United. It is simply not the same. So for those names, it'd be a massive risk. It'd be a massive punt, and I don't think that INEOS at this stage are willing to go for that. But INEOS do have an alternative route, which is Ruud van Nistelrooy. Now, Ruud is different for a few different reasons. Firstly, because, of course, he is currently a first-team coach at the club, so he'll know the players, he'll know the ins and outs of the club, he'll know the scenario better than most, and that, of course, will give him an upper hand compared to the other coaches that I have just mentioned. But more importantly, Ruud is different because Ruud presents a fantastic interim caretaker manager opportunity. And why that could be really good for INEOS is because, for example, I personally believe that one manager that Man United should absolutely be talking to is Inzaghi, Inter Milan's manager. Now, Inzaghi will not get up and leave Inter Milan right now halfway through the season. That just won't happen. But will he leave at the end of the season? Maybe. Maybe he won't. But Van Nistelrooy being at the club until the summer gives Man United the opportunity to talk to different managers, see their scenarios, and that way have more options, more people to talk to, and business in general in terms of bringing managers in and getting rid of it. It's just easier at the summer. So that for me would be the best option to go for right now. And also, not to mention that actually, if Ruud van Nistelrooy really impresses, then you might want to give him the role full time anyway. So that for me would be my number one option of what I would like to do right now. But I also understand that giving it to Ruud van Nistelrooy is also a massive risk in itself, because what if it is a throwaway season? What if Ruud can't do what we in our fantasies of, this legend, this world-class striker that we used to have taken over as manager? What if it just doesn't go well? What if we finish 9th, 10th? I'm just saying, it could happen, because there's no guarantees. Ruud van Nistelrooy done some good work in the Eredivisie, but of course, he's had no experience at a top-level club. So even that within itself is a massive risk. And so overall, the problem, like I said, that they had in the summer, they still have now. Attacking players misfiring. Now, we all know that Man United are amongst the very top of big chances missed in the Premier League this season, amongst the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, etc. We've created an XG of 11.26 and scored only 5. Yeah. Southampton are actually the only team who have scored less than us with 4. And ironically, 3 of our 5 goals this season in the Premier League came against Southampton. The other 2 was against Brighton and Crystal Palace. No, Brighton and Fulham. Meanwhile, in our 4 other games against Villa, Tottenham, Crystal Palace and Liverpool, we scored a big fat 0. That's daunting. That is seriously, seriously daunting. We're not scoring goals. And our attacking players in general don't look confident in front of goal. And actually, in fact, the only one who has at times looked really confident in front of goal is Marcus Rashford, which I can't fathom why Erik Ten Hag would then drop him against Crystal Palace, why he would then take him off against Porto at half-time. I understand there was defensive issues, but regardless, he was the one creating chances. He was the one creating goals. Why have you taken him off? But that's besides the point. So my point here is that INEOS might be looking at this and thinking, well, actually, the underlying numbers are decent. We shouldn't be, 14th we are now? We shouldn't be in 14th place if you look at the underlying numbers. Which, to some extent, is true. If Xerxes puts away a few of his chances, if we score another in the Brighton game to make it 2-1, if that offside, the one where the Garnacho scored and Xerxes was offside, if that doesn't happen, if these little bits don't happen, if our players score goals, maybe the tide can change, maybe things will change in Man United, maybe we wouldn't be in this rut that we're currently in. Now, for me, I generally disagree. I think that it's not a coincidence that 5 or 6 of your attacking players all don't look confident, all aren't scoring goals. And even when you look at, like I said, the big chances missed, all right, Arsenal are there, Liverpool are there, Tottenham are there, but they're creating lots. So it's okay that they're missing so many because they'll create more. With Man United, it's like we're creating a very limited amount of chances. So those big chances that we're missing, it's like once you missed a few of those, that's it. You're not creating them anymore. So for me personally, I don't see this as a value, as a reason that makes sense. But I think that some people might, and INEOS might. They might look at it and think, well, actually, Højlund being back now, Rashford picks up a bit of form. That could maybe help Ten Hag get back to winning ways. That could be how they're looking at it. Cycle of sacking managers. Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, Ragnick, and now Erik Ten Hag. There is no way that not a single one of these managers were good enough to make Man United a success, to make their time at Man United a success. I think that the problems at the club, and well, I know that the problems at the club are far more deeply rooted than just the manager. It's not just at the surface. It is a rot that has been at the club for a long time. And it goes back to the former ownership. Well, I say former ownership, they still own the club, but you know what I mean? The Glazers, Ed Woodward, etc. Now, I think that with INEOS in charge, with Ashworth, with Barada, the signs are there that, Man United, this fallen giant, will rise again at some point. But it will take time. It will take patience. And I think that from INEOS' side, I think they recognise the sheer amount of problems at the club that are, far more complicated than just the manager, than the players, the contracts, etc., etc. I think that they see how bad things are at the club, especially for the size of the club. It should be, everything at the club should be at such a higher standard than it actually is. I think that INEOS recognise that. So I think that maybe they're trying to give him more time while in their eyes the club is healing, if that kind of makes sense. And also on top of that as well, I think the INEOS are thinking, well, actually, we see that the mess that is still here, the mess that we're trying to tidy, but nonetheless, is still here. It's going to take time, right? If we bring a manager into this mess now, in the middle of the season as well, we're not setting that manager up for success. So either it's, like I said, wanting to give Ten Hag more of a chance under better management, better ownership of the club, or that they're allowing time for this new management to get settled for maybe another transfer window or two before you bring in your selection of manager, before you bring in someone who you really believe in and give that manager the best chance possible to succeed. That could be another reason why INEOS are currently sticking with Ten Hag. Key players struggling. When you look at, let's say, Arsenal, I could point at Saliba, Gabriel, Saka, Declan Rice, and probably Ben White, and say that for most weeks you're going to get a 7 out of 10 out of those bunch. At Man City, I would point at Akanji, Rodri when he's fit, Kyle Walker, Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, a bunch of players who you'd say you know what you're going to get out of them week by week. Then you got Liverpool, Van Dijk, Robertson, Trent, Salah, etc., etc. So my point is that every elite club, every manager who wants to manage an elite club needs a core base of players who you know what you're going to get out of those players week in, week out. Now, in Erik Ten Hag's first season, I would say he had those players. Those players for Erik Ten Hag were Lisandro Martinez, were Diogo Dalot, Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, and Marcus Rashford as well. Of course, he had a brilliant season in his first season. Out of those bunch, the only one who is still consistently performing is Diogo Dalot. The rest have peaked and dropped. If you can run through all of them individually. I mean, Casemiro, for example, I don't know what's happened to him since that first season. I'm very reluctant to say, oh, his legs are gone. I think that's very lazy analysis. His game has never been about his pace or intensity of his game. It's been about reading the danger, smelling the danger, seeing it before it happens, making tackles at the right time. But since Erik Ten Hag's first season, his decision-making, lunging into tackles, appearing lazy at times, I can't exactly pinpoint what's happened to Casemiro's game, but he's off it. Lisandro Martinez was injured basically for the whole of last season, and this season he hasn't started very well. That could be down to injuries, that could be down to just not feeling sharp, maybe because he was at the Copa America, he didn't really get enough rest and pre-season, etc. For whatever reason, he's not been fantastic at the beginning of this season. Bruno Fernandes, to be honest with you right now, is stinking it up. I'm not going to lie to you. He is stinking it up. And I love Bruno. I think that a lot of the criticism that he gets is very unfair. I think that a lot of fans need to actually deep where Man United would be as a club if it wasn't for Bruno Fernandes at times. I think that post Sir Alex Ferguson, he is our best signing. But he's had a stinker at the beginning of the season. Missing chances, misplaced passes, and you don't mind the misplaced passes of Bruno because every now and then he picks out a world-class pass, but those passes just haven't been there. Rashford, almost non-existent at times last season. This season he's looked better, looks bright, but still not at the levels we saw him once at. Who else did I say? I think that was it, right? Like I said, Dalot was the only one who I think is still consistent. So it's going to be difficult for Erik Ten Hag when his most reliable players can't be relied on. Especially so when you've got a batch of players like Kobbie Mainoo, Garnacho, Højlund, probably put Amad Diallo in that list as well. Young players who are still raw, very talented, have potential, but need looking after. you need those reliable players to also not only help out the manager, but to look after those young players. And at times, actually, it's felt like the young players are carrying the experienced players. So I think that INEOS will be looking at that and thinking, well, can we put the drop-off of some of the individual performances? And yes, a lot of their performances will come down to how they're being coached, will come down to how the team is being set up, but a lot of it is individual as well. Rashford's form last season, that's down to him. Bruno Fernandes' start this season, that's down to him. Lisandro Martinez looking off it, that's down to him at the beginning of this season. Casemiro, in my opinion, that's down to him. So I think that INEOS could also be looking at that and thinking, well, actually, a lot of his reliable players are individually not performing. And it's going to be difficult for Erik Ten Hag to perform when his most trusted players aren't. Still very early on in the season. In the first few months of the 2021-22 season, Arsenal lost 2-0 to Brentford, 2-0 to Chelsea, 5-0 to Man City, 4-0 to Liverpool, and 3-2 to United. But still managed to turn it around and only missed out on top 4 by 2 points at the end of the season. Now, the point I'm trying to make with that is that INEOS might be looking at this situation right now and thinking, well, actually, we're 2-3 months into the new season, 7 games into the Premier League season. Let's not panic. We've had a fairly good and successful transfer window. Let's let the new players bed into the squad, get used to the city, to the manager, to the club, etc., etc. Let's get Euro back. Let's get Luke Shaw back and actually have a left back, which, by the way, is a massive, massive problem, but that might be a whole nother video in itself. Yeah, let's get Euro back. Let's get Luke Shaw back. Let's let things marinate before we make an impulsive decision after just 7 games in the Premier League. Now, while I get that, I would disagree with that point in general because I just feel like you can see the pattern. The pattern isn't good. It feels like it's only getting worse. And like I said before, I don't see how Erik Ten Hag turns this around. But nonetheless, it's a valid point. We're literally only in October. There is a lot of football to be played. A lot of time for Erik Ten Hag to turn this around, which, by the way, and I'll end on this point, while I don't think that he will turn it around, I really hope he does. I really, really hope he can do it. I would love to see us go on a 6-7 game unbeaten run until the next international break, and all of this chat, all of this talk about a new manager coming in can just be over and done with and we kick on. I would love to see that, but I just don't think it will happen. But those are my 5 reasons as to why I think INEOS are keeping Erik Ten Hag in the job. Let me know your thoughts, in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you lot on the next one.